Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving into something pretty significant that happened in France recently. That's the civil unrest, the riots.
Yeah.
That kicked off right after Paris Saint-Germain won the Champions League back on May 31st, 2025.
Yeah, it was meant to be this amazing sporting moment, right? A historic win. But it escalated fast.
Yeah.
Became a real flashpoint for some much deeper things going on in society there.
Exactly. So our mission here in this deep dive is to sort of navigate through the information you've shared with us. We really want to look at the hard facts,
Right.
what actually happened, but also trying to understand the different stories, the narratives, even the theories flying around, trying to explain why it got so intense.
Right. We've got quite a pile of material. There are reports, detailing the immediate stuff, the tragic deaths, injuries, the sheer amount of damage, arrests. But then there are also these analyses looking at the underlying causes, social factors, political context. And yeah, like you said, overviews of some pretty wild alternative theories that surfaced afterward.
It sounds complex.
Oh, it is. The picture you get is definitely complex. It really shows how one single event, even a celebration, can just slam into these existing tensions and then, boom, widespread disruption. And that chaos, it just becomes fertile ground for all sorts of interpretations. Some true, some, well, not so much.
Okay.
So we're here to guide you through that, point out the key insights from the sources, and help, make sense of the different layers, especially separating facts from claims.
Got it. So let's start right at the beginning then. The immediate trigger.
Yeah.
PSG's huge moment, a 5-0 win against Inter Milan, Champions League final. Massive deal for the club.
Absolutely massive. A historic night, really. And look, initially a lot of the celebrations were peaceful. You saw that later with the official parade on the Champs-Élysées. That actually went off okay, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
But on the night of the win itself, yeah, that initial happy atmosphere, especially around the Champs-Élysées and near the stadium, Parc des Princes, it just tipped over.
And the consequences were, frankly, awful, tragic even. We learned there were 2 deaths connected to it all.
Sadly, yes. A 17-year-old boy was stabbed down in Dax, which is in the southwest. And then in central Paris, a 23-year-old died in a scooter accident after a collision during the unrest.
Just terrible. And beyond the fatalities, the injuries, the numbers are quite shocking.
They really are. There was a police officer in Normandy hit by a firework, critically injured. He was actually placed in a coma.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Then in Paris, another 18 officers injured, 3 more elsewhere. 7 firefighters got hurt too. And then just people out celebrating, 192 of them reported injured, just caught up in it.
That's a heavy toll. And the scale of the actual disruption that night. Arrests, damage.
Huge scale. Over 500 arrests across the country, but nearly all of them, 491, were in Paris.
Right.
And the property damage.
Yeah.
264 vehicles set on fire. Nearly 700 separate fire incidents reported across Paris, plus widespread looting, vandalism. We saw shops like Foot Locker, Maison du Monde being targeted.
So a massive police response was needed then.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. They deployed around 5,400 officers just in Paris that night. Had to use tear gas, water cannons, baton charges, basically trying to regain control, especially in the most volatile areas.
Even PSG, the club itself, had to say something, didn't they?
They did. They came out publicly, condemned the violence pretty strongly, said it went against everything the club stands for, wasn't representative of their real fans.
Understandable. Okay, so moving beyond that immediate night of chaos, the political fallout started quickly too, right?
Oh yeah, almost immediately. The interior minister at the time, Bruno Retailleau, used some very strong language. He called the rioters barbarians.
I remember that. And that didn't go down well everywhere.
No, definitely not. It drew immediate fire from left-wing politicians. They argued that kind of language was racially loaded, insensitive, given, the demographics often involved or perceived to be involved in these situations.
Meanwhile, President
Macron denounced the violence too, stressed accountability, the need for order, standard presidential response, really.
And on the other side of the spectrum.
Well, far-right leaders, folks from the National Rally, they jumped on it too. But their angle was criticizing the government's response as being too weak, inadequate. And they linked the unrest, as they often do, to deeper societal problems, immigration, lack of integration, basically saying the government wasn't tackling the root causes.
And, listening to this, it feels like this wasn't totally out of the blue for France, was it? The sources mention connections to other recent events.
Absolutely not in a vacuum. The material definitely draws lines back. You think about the huge riots in 2023 after the police shot Nahel Merzouk.
Right.
or even going way back to 2005, the Banlieue riots then, these events keep happening. It really underlines that while the PSG win was the spark, the kindling was already there, piled high.
So that takes us straight to those underlying causes, doesn't it? The kindle. The victory was the match, but the analyses we looked at really hammer home the scale, the intensity of these riots that came from somewhere deeper.
Precisely. These weren't just football celebrations that got a bit rowdy. The analyses point to several sort of pre-existing conditions that fueled the fire. First, there's the whole issue of socioeconomic disparities. Long-term problems like high unemployment, poverty, feeling marginalized, especially concentrated in certain urban areas, the banlieues.
Okay, that makes sense. What else?
Second big factor, police-community relations. They're incredibly strained in many areas. There's a history, or at least a strong perception, of police violence, racial profiling, particularly affecting young people in suburban areas. That creates a lot of distrust, antagonism.
Right, that tension is definitely a theme.
And thirdly, related to that is the sense of youth disenfranchisement, a feeling among many young people, particularly maybe those from immigrant backgrounds, that they're just alienated, cut off from opportunities, not really part of the mainstream, and that feeling can make them perhaps more susceptible to joining in when something like this kicks off. It's an outlet, maybe.
So it paints a picture less of just, like, football hooliganism and more of a really volatile cocktail of deep-seated social issues. The PSG victory was just the spark that lit the fuse on this massive pre-existing tinderbox.
That's exactly the sense you get from the analyses. It's much bigger than just the match itself.
Okay, but then there's this whole other layer, isn't there? Beyond the facts, beyond the accepted underlying causes. The material you sent also gets into this whole world of alternative narratives. Let's just call them what they are, the conspiracy theories that started doing the rounds. And it's pretty likely if you were online or talking to people around that time, you probably bumped into some of these yourself.
Oh, definitely. They spread like wildfire. And look, it is so important to stress this up front, and the sources we reviewed stress this repeatedly. None of these theories that we're about to talk about have any credible, hard evidence backing them up. Okay.
Yeah, crucial point.
They're presented in the material as claims that circulated, narratives that emerged, and they need to be treated with, extreme skepticism. What they often do reflect, though, is maybe underlying fears in society, a deep distrust of institutions, government, media, or just people trying to find a simple explanation for something chaotic and frightening.
Okay, so bearing that massive health warning in mind, what were some of these theories the material described?
Well, one prominent one was the idea of a false flag operation.
Okay, what's the claim there?
The basic claim was that the French government, or maybe some shadowy elements within it, either allowed the unrest to happen or maybe even actively staged parts of it. The narrative went something like, the riot seemed almost too convenient, a perfect distraction from other problems, maybe inflation, unemployment, those pension protests that were happening. Or, alternatively, maybe it was designed to justify bringing in tougher security measures, more surveillance, that sort of thing. Some people even try to use the rapid police deployment as proof that the authorities must have known it was coming or were somehow facilitating it.
But the analysis you mentioned pushes back.
Hard. It points out, first, that this isn't new. Similar theories popped up after the 2023 riots. And second, crucially, there's just zero credible validation. No whistleblower has come forward, no leaked documents, no official investigation has found anything remotely supporting this. It's pure speculation based on suspicion.
Okay, what was next on the list? Something about deep state and elite control. Sounds familiar.
Yeah, this one zooms out to the global level. The claim here is that it wasn't just the French state, but powerful global elites. You hear names like the World Economic Forum or just vague globalist financiers who are supposedly behind stirring up this kind of unrest, not just in France, but across Europe.
And the supposed.
Usually presented as part of some grand plan to weaken nation states, destroy national identity, and usher in some kind of technocratic world government. Think digital IDs, cashless society, that kind of stuff. Some versions even got really weird, suggesting football clubs like PSG were being used as cultural tools by these elites.
Right. And the verdict from the source material.
Classic globalist New World Order conspiracy theory. You find it in certain online echo chambers, quite popular there, but again, completely lacking any factual basis or evidence when you actually look for it.
Okay. Then there was the foreign interference idea.
Correct. This hypothesis suggested that maybe outside powers were involved. Names like Russia or Iran got thrown around, or sometimes just unspecified Islamist networks. The idea was they were covertly encouraging the chaos, maybe coordinating things behind the scenes.
How? What was the narrative there?
It often involved ideas about online manipulation, bot farms spreading disinformation, maybe fake videos, or even claims of actual foreign agents on the ground, directing the looting, targeting symbols of capitalism like those Champs-Élysées stores.
And the reality check on that one.
Well, the material acknowledges that French intelligence is generally concerned about foreign influence operations, especially online. That's a real thing. However, it's very clear that no public evidence has surfaced linking these specific riots to any coordinated campaign by a foreign state or external network. It also points out that blaming outsiders can be a convenient way for politicians to sometimes deflect attention from difficult internal problems like inequality or social division.
Got it. And a more tech-focused one, the AI PSYOP theory.
Yeah, this is a more modern flavor of conspiracy. The claim was that social media platforms popular with young people, especially TikTok, were basically being used as weapons, like a digital psychological operation. The narrative suggested maybe AI-generated content, deepfakes, manipulated videos was being pushed out to incite anger, fake scenes of police brutality, exaggerated destruction, that kind of thing, all designed to fuel the flames and get people onto the streets.
Plausible on the surface, maybe?
Well, the material definitely agrees that social media, including TikTok, played a huge role in how fast images and videos of the riots spread. That's undeniable. But it finds no actual evidence of a coordinated, intentional, AI-driven misinformation campaign specifically designed to start or escalate these riots. It does raise a valid point, though, about how platform algorithms themselves might inadvertently amplify sensational or inflammatory content during moments of unrest. That's a separate, real concern.
Okay. One more theory mentioned was controlled chaos for urban reset.
Right. This one's a bit more niche, maybe. The claim was that certain powerful interests in Paris, maybe property developers or city elites, actually wanted some destruction in specific areas.
Why would they want that?
The narrative was that if certain buildings or areas got damaged or burned, particularly ones near districts already undergoing gentrification, it could actually benefit them. Insurance money, government subsidies for rebuilding. The idea was it could fast-track lucrative redevelopment projects they already had planned, almost like clearing the way.
A bit cynical.
Very cynical. And the material is quick to point out this echoes older conspiracy theories about gentrification that pop up sometimes. But again, absolutely zero evidence was found to suggest any kind of coordination or deliberate intent behind which areas suffered damage. Just speculation trying to find a hidden hand.
So across all these different theories, false flag, global elites, foreign meddling, AI psyops, urban reset, the consistent finding in the material is no credible evidence.
Exactly. That's the bottom line from the sources we reviewed. While these theories might resonate because they tap into genuine public anxieties like distrust of government is real, frustration over inequality is real, memories of past traumas are real, but the specific claims made in these narratives, they just don't hold up when you look for actual verifiable proof.
So why is it important then for you listening to understand both sides, the verified facts and these unverified theories? What's the takeaway?
Well, I think the material suggests this whole episode is a really powerful case study. It shows how real, deep-rooted social problems can just explode when triggered by something unexpected, like a football win. And crucially, it shows how moments of crisis and confusion become this breeding ground for alternative explanations, for narratives that try to make sense of the chaos, even if they're not based on fact.
Right. So for you, trying to navigate this stuff, especially with so much information flying around online, the material really underscores the need to be critical, to really try and separate the verified stuff, the death toll, the number of arrests, the documented damage, the well-researched underlying factors like socioeconomic gaps and police issues, separate all that from the claims that are just circulating without proof, even if those claims seem to speak to real feelings of distrust or anxiety people might have.
Precisely. And looking forward, the material does note that official investigations into the violence itself are still ongoing. But beyond that, there seems to be a growing recognition, at least mentioned in the analyses, that France needs to keep grappling with those root causes we talked about. The inequality, the police-community relations, those require ongoing attention and likely serious reforms.
Okay. So we've covered a lot of ground here in this deep dive, working through the material you shared. We went from the immediate tragic events after that PSG win in 2025 through the political reactions, dug into those underlying societal issues that fueled it, and then navigated that whole complex landscape of unverified theories that sprang up.
Yeah, and I think the main thing that really comes through from all the source material is just how layered this event was. It wasn't simple, it was clearly rooted in those deep societal tensions we discussed. It got massively amplified by the specific circumstances of the victory night, and then it was interpreted and maybe misinterpreted through all these different lenses and narratives, many of which, as we saw, just weren't grounded in reality.
Well, thank you for bringing these sources to us and letting us really dig into them with you.
Absolutely. And maybe it leaves us and you with a final thought to chew on, something that arises from all this material. When things feel chaotic and uncertain, how do we as societies actually try to process and make sense of it all? Especially when maybe trust in the usual sources of information government, media is low. And what role do these kinds of unverified stories and theories end up playing in filling that void? Is it helpful, harmful, something in between?
Definitely something to think about. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep thinking critically about the information you come across.